than 4,000 miles away in Southeast Asia, along the southern leg of the Silk Road, another mysterious civilization has been challenging the historians. Towering above the jungle canopy of Cambodia, this was the crowning achievement of the Khmer people, who lived here at Angkor Wat between 800 and 1400 AD. It is an awe-inspiring sight, a vast, stunningly engineered temple complex, the largest religious monument in the world. But at its heart lies an enigma. The civilization that created it seemed to have come out of nowhere. There are few traces of what came before, and few clues to the history of the Khmer people to whom we owe this remarkable place. Professor Charles Hyam has dedicated his professional life to answering the questions that hang over the Angkor civilization.
There is so much to find out about Southeast Asia, but the dominance of the civilization of Angkor over so many centuries is one of the things that attracts any archaeologist coming to Southeast Asia. The first visitors to this great city and temple of Angkor came in the 16th century, and ever since Western people have been wanting to know about its origins. How did it happen? Who was responsible for these enormous monuments? And therefore my interest was trying to find the origins of it way back in the prehistoric past.
One of the things that puzzles experts about this hauntingly magnificent complex is that although the Khmer people are unquestionably Southeast Asian, the temples at Angkor show clear signs of a completely different society, one 2,000 miles and a cultural world away, India. The very center of the temple, with its enormous sandstone towers, was built to represent Mount Meru, the home of the Hindu gods and a sacred site in India. And the Indian influence is equally clear in the detailed artwork that covers the site.
This is one of the best examples of the stimulus provided by Indian epic literature upon the people of Angkor. The local people of Angkor picked up all these fantastic stories taken from the Mahabharata and the Ramayana, these epic Indian literature, and they produced here this great relief that extends over tens of meters on each direction. And essentially this particular one depicts the churning of the ocean of milk, which was designed in order to generate from the oceans below the earth the elixir of immortality known as Amrita.
It isn't just Hinduism that seems to have been an influence at Angkor. The temple at nearby Angkor Thom is decorated with hundreds of sculpted heads. But these figures echo another Indian religion, Buddhism. These images of Khmer kings reflect a strong identification with the Indian prophet, Buddha.
Indian influence is something that's been dominant in trying to explain and understand this civilization. Looking around you at Angkor, you can't help but notice the extraordinary similarities that exist between the architecture, the religion, the language, the script. Everything seems to come from India. And yet, in fact, there is a very, very solid local overlay. So the Indian influence comes in by all means, but it's molded, it's adopted, it's used by the local people to their own advantage. And so therefore it's an interesting mixture that one is constantly trying to unravel. The veneer of Indian culture over a solid local base is the sort of model that we're now working on and looking at.
Clearly the Khmer people had been in contact with Indian ideas and religion over many years. But how had such a powerful influence reached them from such a distance? We know that the Silk Road was never just one highway. There were numerous routes, not all of them on land. At about the time Angkor Wat was built, the Chinese were trading silk with India along a southern sea route via Cambodia. They were using a sailing route that relied upon the monsoon winds to carry boats between India and Cambodia. Once in Cambodia, the Indian sailboats were marooned until the winds changed direction to blow them back to the subcontinent. The vagaries of the monsoon often kept the traders stranded for as long as 6 months at a time. So Cambodia became their second home, and Indian religion and culture began to take root in the region. Trade explained the Indian influence, but no one knew just when these contacts had begun. Did Indian traders arrive after the Angkor civilization was established, merely adding a veneer of Indian culture, or did they come far earlier, shaping and forming the entire Angkor civilization? Nobody knew. For Charles Hyam, it was a crucial question. He suspected that Indian trading was far older than we thought, reaching back before the time of Angkor Wat and the silk trade, and he began to look for proof. He was inspired by long-lost Chinese documents that had come to light early in the 20th century. They were detailed descriptions of a thriving Cambodian seaport and city called Funan. When it was visited by the Chinese in the 3rd century AD, Funan was said to be already trading with India and showing the marked influence of Indian culture and religion. The only problem was that Funan did not seem to exist. Scholars had found no signs of this culture, which would have predated Angkor Wat by more than 800 years. In the absence of any sign of the city itself, most scholars dismissed the Funan documents as a traveler's tale. But during the 1930s, a French geographer named Pierre Paris detected the outline of a man-made canal system in a coastal area of Cambodia called Angkor Borai. Follow-up work was interrupted by war, and it wasn't until 1995 that research at the site could begin. It was immediately clear that the canal system was well-planned and extensive, linking sea and the hinterland with an ancient settlement at Angkor Borai. At first, archaeologists had assumed that the canals were part of a rice irrigation system, but there was another possible explanation. Could these be the trading highways described by the Chinese nearly 2,000 years ago? Could Angkor Borai be the fabled lost city of Funan? Charles has come to Angkor Borai to meet Dr. Miriam Stark of the University of Hawaii, a colleague who has spent 8 years working on the site.
Hello, Charles. How are you?
See you again.
Nice to see you.
Sit you down. How's it going?
He has brought with him a translation of the original Chinese documents describing Funan to compare with what Dr. Stark's work has revealed at Angkor Borai.
Miriam, I brought the massive tome, or tomes, that you mentioned. Excellent. And here we have the description of Le Funan by Paul Pelliot's translation of the Chinese documents that was published precisely 100 years ago.
But he talked a lot about the moats and also about the wall that surrounded all of the kinds of capitals and all the Funan cities. And Angkor Borai here has still several remaining segments of the wall, especially here along its eastern side.
Yep. And is it your view that the city here would have been occupied in the 3rd century AD at the same time that the Chinese emissaries came down looking for an alternative maritime Silk Road?
Oh, yes. What's interesting about Angkor Borai is that actually the occupation starts in the 4th century BC. So
Miriam's work has already established that there was indeed a significant settlement here at the time that the Funan descriptions were written. Now her attention has turned to the waterway complex.
yeah.
So, how's it going with the canals? You've been working on them now for some time, haven't you?
We have, and the reason we have is because part of understanding this Funan is determined